Okay, here we are. We've had some hiccups here. We're here with Foster Talk with Dr. John and Jen. Whew, what a journey it's been tonight. It's been a little bit different tonight because I was trying to get a new person on. So this is completely different for us tonight, okay? So I appreciate you being patient. I appreciate you holding on there. This is Foster Talk with Dr. John and Jen Lilley, the celebrity actress and movie star you know from all those Hallmark movies. And she should be joining us in here in just a moment. Um, Again, it's brand new. I've never done this before. The other night I thought, you know what? I think I want to have a co-host, one a good friend of mine. So I'm waiting for her to accept the link. And there she is, and she should be turning right about there. There we are. Okay.
Okay, is this the right page?
This is the right page.
I'm the worst with
this
Facebook.
is the right page. I'm pretty sure it's the right page. So yeah, so Jen and I went to Washington, D.C. Again, Foster Talk with Dr. John and Jen, just joining us late. I'm so sorry. It's been a little bit of hiccup here, but we are here live answering your questions like we do every Tuesday and Thursday night. And the other day, I was talking to Jen about a number of things, and we were talking about some parenting issues, and I thought, you know what? I need to get Jen's parenting expertise. I need to learn from her because she is the parent of 3 young children. Plus, she juggles so much. She's got so much going on in her life. And I thought, well, gosh, I need to learn a thing from her. And I want to share that wisdom with you. So this is why we are doing it tonight, special edition. And hopefully we are on here live. But Jen, so you're telling us, there we are, good. We are here tonight, good, right page. So 3 rules. If you know the 3 rules, rule number 1 is tag a foster parent friend, let them know you're here. Rule 2, get those fingers flying, ask anything you want, parenting, foster care, adoption, kinship, it does not matter. And the 3rd rule is if someone makes a comment or asks a question, you think, Dr. John, Ms. Jen, Dr. Jen, I think I can answer that. I've been there, done that. We want to hear from you. We want to hear how you did it. So with that in mind, okay, Jen says, Jen, since you became a foster parent, what has been the most challenging part you faced, and what did you do to overcome it? Hey, Tim, thank you for asking. Glad you're here. Jen, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. Dr. John, I think you've had a lot, you've obviously had a lot more experience than I have. And so let me know if you also relate to this. I think the hardest thing in foster care for me, if I had to pick one, because there's a lot of challenges that come with foster care, the hardest thing for me that I was not prepared for was playing middle parent. And specifically for me was playing middle mom. And for anyone who's new to foster parenting, what I'm referring to is I'm licensed in the state of California. So in the state of California, you have my children were infants when I got them. And so this varies depending on how old your child is who's in your care. But in California, if you take in an infant, then starting out, you're going to have the judge orders 2 mandatory supervised visits for the mom. In our case, it was the mom. It ended up the dad got added in, so it ended up being 4 monitored visits a week. I got lucky in that the dad's visits I did not monitor in my son Caden's case because of the nature of my job. It was just too dangerous. But playing middle mom, going to those visits and having to act as monitor was extremely challenging and not something that I was prepared for, even though I was told that was the case in my foster parent training. Because at least for me, and I would hope anyone in this room, I love people and I am committed to family reunification. And loving the birth parents well. And I obviously understand, since I've adopted 2 boys through foster care, reunification is not always possible, nor is it always a good idea. But extending grace and love to a parent that you're observing have very poor parenting skills, especially a child that you're caring for, that you've loved and grown very attached to, is extremely difficult to navigate. And it's very emotional too. So for me personally, that was the hardest, was just trying to navigate a real love for the boy's mom and make sure she felt loved, but also, I don't know, like my boy's mom, she's really young. So it was like, in a way, I felt like I was her mom too. So that was hard for me to navigate. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to navigate, is playing middle parent.
Right, right. Great question, Jen. I've been there. For me, the hardest part is when the kids leave, the broken heart for me. I become so attached to the kids, they become members of my family. And I was telling somebody in a podcast just yesterday that for me, a foster parent's heart's like a quilt, all these patches over it, and I have grieved, and I've become an emotional cripple. I used to believe that men don't cry. I must be tough. After the death of my first child, I did not grieve. I did not allow myself to cry because I thought I must be tough for her. Now, if I were to turn on the Hallmark channel, I'm just going to start crying as soon as I turn the channel on because of the stories. My wife knows she cannot take me to any movie that has Nicholas Sparks attached to it. Jen's movie is going to be, I will be blubbering in tears. So, but yeah, the hardest part for me is when the children leave. Hey, Tim, thanks for asking. Michelle is here. Michelle says, Jen, do you have any suggestions for a foster parent that went through an investigation that came back unfounded, but with concerns, who is wanting to fight to get their foster child daughter back, and she wants to come back? It's a great question, Michelle. Thanks for asking. Jen, do you want to tackle that one there?
So the question, just so I understand it,
there
was an investigation, it was unfounded, and now what is the issue?
Let's see. The foster parent that went through an investigation. So the foster parent went through the investigations. They were unfounded, and the looks like the birth. Let's see. The birth parents are fighting it. It looks like the birth parents might be fighting it.
I don't think I understand the scenario. Do you?
Well, Jen, I'm sorry, Michelle. I really don't understand it either, Michelle. So what I would like you to do is if you could give us a little bit more insight there, maybe a little bit more clarity so we both can answer. I will tell you this, Michelle, if you're giving some clarity there, the most important thing you can do, and Elena mentioned this earlier, and this is documentation. You've got to make sure you document everything. So when those unfounded accusations come, when those allegations, false accusations come about, you have the documentation there. And of course, you document in a proper fashion. There's a right way to document. There's a wrong way to document when it comes to foster parenting. You've got to be documenting everything. So when those accusations do come, you have the documentation ready. But again, Michelle, if you could just give us a little bit more clarity, we would love to answer that question for you. Appreciate you asking. Keisha's here. How should I deal with constant false accusations from bio parents and kinship? Same thing, Keisha, just as I said there, make sure that you're documenting every single thing that happens, all right? Because you're going to get those accusations. And listen, I've had 60 plus kids through my home. I've had those accusations. My wife and I have faced 2 false accusations from the birth parents. And we were able to have the evidence, if you will, in the documentation. And you document in a fashion that is non-biased, non-emotional, just the facts, so to speak. And you should be documenting every single thing that happens. If the child should scrape its knee, you need to document when it happened, where it happened, what you did. If the child should have a bad visitation, comes home emotionally upset, document how that happened, document how the child went before the visitation, after the visitation, how you addressed it. Anything that should be happening, you need to be documenting that.
And when you say document, Dr. John, then who are you turning those documents into? Because for me, I had to turn them into my FFA.
Yes, you should. Well, what I always encourage is you keep a record of the documentation for yourself. I always keep mine on a jump drive, and I always keep mine printed out. And then you can also turn your documentation into the caseworker or into the agency. And if you don't hear anything back, you just keep letting the agency know that, here's the information, here's the documentation. But again, you keep a record for yourself in case there's any question. That's so important. You back it up. I back it up on 3 different jump drives myself. Okay, Jasmine says, we've been licensed for months with no placements. Any suggestions? Should we switch agencies? What do you think, Jen?
I don't know that I would switch agencies. I think that's something you could answer better, but I would also, the first thing that makes me think of is if you have a profile that is too limiting. So for Jason and I, for example, it's my husband, we said, we'll take anybody just right out the gate. We'll take anybody ages 0 to 10. And while I'm a huge fan of fostering teens, and, maybe now I would do it right now, because I have toddlers, there's like a whole psychology of like pecking order. But, at the start I was still playing a teenager on TV. So it was like, I can't take a teenager. I'm smaller than a teenager. So we did 0 to 10. boy, girl, any nationality, all of that. And we got, 3 calls before I could even answer them. So sometimes I've seen that when that's the case, it can be that somebody requests something really, really specific. So I would first say, like, make sure you're not requesting something specific, and to make sure that you are fostering in order to foster versus fostering to adopt. That's kind of my really blunt answer, but assuming that you are, and assuming that, like, you're very open and all of that. And I don't know your scenario. For me, obviously, I would have an age restriction right now because my oldest son is 4. So I would want somebody younger than 4.
Sure.
I don't know your situation. So assuming that it's all great, I wouldn't necessarily switch agencies. I would maybe just follow up with the agency, and then maybe also, Dr. John, you're really going to have to comment on this, but I am a little bit brassy and sassy. So
Yes, you are brassy.
I would probably call DCFS or my local CPS and just be like, hey, I'm licensed through Child Help. I haven't gotten a call. I wanted you to just know that I am licensed and willing to take a child.
Oh, you mentioned something there is important. When you get so there's a bunch of questions that I always ask, and in fact, all those questions are in the book, The Foster Parenting Manual. When you get that phone call from the agency, you have to determine very, very quickly: is this the right placement for my family at this time? Is my family the right placement for this child at this time? Can I provide the support, the resources this child needs at this time? And sometimes you need to take into factor the ages of your own children. Like Jen, when my wife and I first started fostering, we did not take children that were older than our own kids, and we threw that window out. I think maybe the 4th year, but that was after some prayer. Now, in regards to switching agencies, if your agency simply is not working with you for a number of reasons, there are some faith-based agencies out there that might be a better fit for you. If you're a person of faith, you might want to consider a faith-based agency or a private agency. There are benefits to both state agencies and both private agency. Sure appreciate you asking here. All right, let's continue on here. Shannon says, my foster daughter, 9 months, has kinship placement, so I wasn't prepared at all. How do you handle the intrusive nature of foster care? Tons of appointments, caseworker visits, kinship worker visits, CASA visits, etc. Sometimes it's overwhelming for a single mom who works full-time with 2 teenage bios as well. Jen, I know that you have done all that. You've had the appointments, you've had the caseworker visits, you've had all that, the doctor's visits, and you're juggling a full-time job as well. How did you handle it sometimes?
Not well. I think that you have to first give yourself grace. And I think that you're doing the first step right, which is being in this foster parenting support group. I think you need a lot of support, and I think that it's okay to tell your caseworker that you're overwhelmed. That's what I did. When Caden got, visit number 4, a monitored visit, he was only an infant. He was only supposed to be temporary. We're so glad that we got to adopt him, but I was so overwhelmed, and living in LA, a 2-hour visit was a 4-hour visit. So 4 visits a week was 16 hours during the work week that I had to leave. And even though I'm an actress, it's like, I am still working like a 9 to 5. Acting is a very behind the scenes, like, I'm doing a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of unglamorous things that happen when you're an actress. There's still like a desk job part of it. And so I basically emailed my social worker, and it was like very early because Caden was my first. And I said, if I get one more visit for this child, like, I think we're going to have to move this child. As like hard as that, pains me, I can't do this. And my social worker, because it was my first baby, and I was just like, I can't do this. My social worker, thank God, was the only support that I had. I didn't have a Facebook group. I didn't know Dr. DeGarmo yet. And my caseworker, Norman, was just like, hey, you can hang up your cape now. Like, we can work with you. It's not necessarily your job to do everything as the foster parent. We recognize that you're already doing heavy lifting.
Right.
But sometimes you just need to ask your caseworker for help and just say, like, hey, I want to work with you. I love this child. I don't know what else to do. But what do you think, Dr. John? Because you've had a lot more experience than I have.
A support group is essential. the support group is essential. No one, as I said earlier, no one understands a foster parent like another foster parent, and that includes your family members and those closest to you sometimes. You need to have that's the type of support group who you can sometimes to vent to, sometimes to share your frustrations with, sometimes to cry on, sometimes to rely upon and give you help. Also, there are a lot of faith-based organizations and churches right now who are recognizing that there's a ministry here, a form of ministry, if you will, a form of outreach, and they're forming foster parent support groups. They might help in transportation. They might help in providing meals and support services. So that's certainly something to look at there. Hey, Brittany says, COVID has impacted the amount of children in care. Brittany, you're absolutely right in so many levels, in so many different ways. Danny Van here, the main focus should be on the kids and communication is key. Danny, I couldn't agree with you more there. I'm sure Jen agrees with that too. The main focus should be on the kids. Sometimes it gets lost. Hey, this is Foster Talk with Dr. John and Jen on this special edition here. So glad you're here with us tonight. And Jen Lilley, superstar actress, mega amazing parent. She's here with us tonight. Hey, Jen, here's a question for you. All right, this is from Caitlin. Caitlin, and you just did this, Jen. Are you familiar with a TPR process? Actually, she's asking about the TPR appeal process. I've heard the TPR is usually affirmed in appellate court. Jen, can you tell us a little about your scenario in TPR recently?
So for anybody just tuning in that doesn't know what TPR is, that stands for termination of parental rights. Right. And so with that, I was very lucky in that my boy's mom did not repeal TPR. Nor did their dads, and especially in Jeffrey's case, because he's Caden's brother, same mom, different dads, they were actually delighted that they knew we were going to adopt Jeffrey. However, I know with my son Caden's case, which was my first adoption case, I was extremely stressed out about it. Like anybody who's been through, foster care to that point, it's like, that's where you can only relate to another foster parent. Like, it makes me want to cry even thinking about it. It's been like 3 years. Like, there is nothing more emotional than the adoption journey through foster care, especially when you know that if that child goes back, they're probably going to end up dead. And yeah. I was extremely worried that TPR would be appealed in Caden's case. But my social worker, Norman, and now I've worked with government agencies in various states, just like you have, Dr. John. Every single one of them in every single state has told me that once TPR happens, the parent has like 3 appeals. Really, all of that is just prolonging your waiting for adoption. Like, none of them have ever seen TPR be overturned, ever. So I think that once you've had TPR, yeah, Dr. John, you go. I've always heard that it's extremely rare.
It is so very rare unless it's involved with ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act. Now, sadly, well, I shouldn't say necessarily sadly, but the rights of the tribe supersede the rights of adoption. And I've worked with a couple families who have adopted children, and then later on, a member of the tribe, not even necessarily related to the child, was able to have the child removed from the adoptive family and placed back with the tribe. And you can imagine, each of these families that I worked with, the tremendous grief and world of problems this presented. Mental health issues for the child, mental health issues for the foster parents, the lack of trust, just a mess in all stars. So normally, as Jen said, yes, when TPR happens, it's final in regards to the court, unless it's involved with ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, which has its own separate set of rules. And it can be very, very messy, and there needs to be reform there to be sure. Hey, Stephanie's here. Stephanie, glad you're here with us tonight. Stephanie says, we've been treated differently as a lesbian couple. Well, Stephanie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Go ahead and expand a little bit about that and share with us if you'd like. Sarah said, hey, Sarah, glad you're here with us tonight. Sarah says, I'm in the middle of getting licensed. My fiance and I do kinship care for my 14 and 12-year-old nephews. Hey, Sarah, check out our brand new webinar, The Foster Care Institute, about kinship care, premiered last week. They're currently in the process of being removed from their grandfather's care to emergency temporary care with their father's first cousin. I've been working tirelessly since November to get licensed, and I'm just waiting to get a house. Okay, you got a long question. Let me see from the bottom here. I'm wondering How to show a judge that I'm better qualified than the family. What does a judge look for in deciding what's best for the kids? I have a much better, closer relationship with the kids. I'm wondering what will be enough. Well, I'll start off there first, and then Jen can chime in. Sarah, what I would encourage you to do is, first of all, if you want to show evidence to the judge and the caseworkers that you feel that you're the better fit, then you need to get some. First of all, you need to get something documentation. You need to get some evidence, so to speak, from some people that you know. Maybe there might be an attorney, or maybe there's maybe your boss, maybe a teacher of the child. You need to get something written, somebody giving, what's what I'm looking for here, a support for you, all right? And I would get three letters of recommendation, if you will, 3 letters of recommendation, all right? And make sure you make copies of that. I would also ask the caseworker if they would like to interview anybody in that regard. Make sure you have evidence of your house payment and your tax statements, all that legal paperwork ready, and then just make that appeal. You know, the kinship care is it's a very, very challenging aspect in regards of who is a child placed with. Is it placed with the grandparents? Is it placed with the cousins? Is it placed with the older siblings or aunts and uncles? And normally it's done based upon who the child is going to be best supported by. So you have to show evidence that if you feel that you are, that you can best support this child than others. Now, also keep this in mind, Sarah, when you do things like that, you might strain some of the relationships with your other relatives because they might be a little bit of a battle, if you will. Jen, what did you think about that? What do you think about what Sarah's asking there?
I think you answered it perfectly. I have nothing else to add.
Okay, great. Great. Going back to Caitlin's question about adoption, she says, thank you so much. I appreciate it. No ICWA child here. That's fantastic. I really appreciate this program. Much needed. Thank you for sharing, Jen. It is emotional. Yeah, it is emotional. All right, Stephanie's here. Stephanie, glad you're here. Foster Talk with Dr. Jen and John DeGarmo. The caseworker has been very against us. She has lied in court, stating we have never told the kids we're having behaviors. They said in court about being a lesbian couple. The caseworker is working against us and has been so very rude. They lied in court recently, and the kids were removed, and now we have court this month to tell our side. The caseworker said we are lying because we want to keep the kids. I keep saying keep is terrible. Stephanie, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it's got to be very emotionally draining for you and stressful, and I'm sure you're feeling a lot of anxiety. You and your partner are feeling a lot of anxiety as well. So Stephanie, what I would encourage you to do, again, I'm going to go back to documentation here, okay? If you feel the caseworker is making some false accusations against you, then you need to show evidence that those accusations are indeed false. So whatever she is, as you say, lying about, whatever it might be, then you need to show evidence that it's not, and you can do that through the documentation. Hopefully you've done that. If you don't know how to properly document or you've not done it already, I would strongly encourage you to go back to the Foster Care Institute and check out that webinar on documentation. You're going to find the strategies you need there. But it can be challenging. Stephanie says it is a lot to explain. The caseworker just needs to be against us. I appreciate that. I understand that. And Stephanie, if you feel that's the case, you might want to go to the supervisor. But do it in a professional, non-emotional fashion. Sometimes it's okay to go to that supervisor and say, hey, we've tried, here's the documentation, here's the evidence, we've done this, this, and this. We just feel that our side of the story is not being heard properly. Can you help us with it? That's what you do. That's what I would suggest. Jen, any suggestions there?
No, not really, because I mean, I don't know the details of the case to really be able to give any advice. I think documentation is always important. I mean, my only advice that may or may not apply here is I have an episode of Fostering Hope with Jen Lilley where I talk to my social worker, Norman, and kind of get insight on a social worker's perspective that may be helpful in kind of de-escalating the emotions and helping you if you need to move forward and talk to the supervisor. But for me, it's like, I don't know what the accusations are. I don't know how long you've had the child. I don't know the case. So I would say documentation is always good. And if I knew more, I could probably help more.
Right, and it is hard.
And I'm not asking you to give more details. I'm just saying I don't feel equipped to give you a proper answer other than documentation.
Right, and I would agree with Jen. Jen. Sometimes we don't have the information fully available. We just can give you our best insight. So I surely appreciate you asking. Anne says, does there come a time that the foster parent becomes kin? We've had our little man since day 3 and now 8 months with not much hope for reunification yet. Parents are involved, but not following the plan. Well, Anne, no, you don't become kin unless it's through the adoption process, okay? Now, Jen will tell you this right here. 50% of children who are in foster care are reunified. Jen, of that 50% that are reunified, of that 50%, how many re-enter back into care?
33% on average, 29 to 33,
right.
Depending on the state.
Right. So reunification does not always end well. But at the same time, reunification is always the end goal of foster care. It's important to remember that. If you feel that the reunification, if you feel the parents are involved but not following the plan, hey, it's okay to let the caseworker know that you're concerned, that you are concerned for the best interest of the child. And also, you might want to ask the caseworker, is there anything I can do to help the birth parents? Or you might want to even, and if you feel comfortable about this, you might actually reach out to the birth parents and say, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to care for your child. Is there anything that we can do to help you during this process? A simple question like that, and really helps to help the reunification process and maybe even make it a little less anxious when you're working with those birth parents. Jen, I know you had a wonderful experience with the children that you adopted with their birth family members, their birth mother.
I did, but in Caden's case, my 4-year-old, he would definitely not be alive right now had he reunified. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind he would not have made it to his 3rd birthday. There's no way. And so with his case, honestly, this is not something Dr. John probably condones, but I did this and I condone it. I created a fake social media account and I kept tabs on the parent because I knew that the dad was a criminal and was engaging in some extreme criminal behavior that would have caused Caden his life. And so I documented it under a fake account and I turned it in to the social worker. So I did. So, I mean, that wasn't biased. It was like, look, here is this person on his social media in his own free will, documenting in his live that he's going to do X, Y, and Z, like drunk driving, I have a video of this dad, like literally driving down the freeway, drinking while driving on an Instagram live. It was like, because you don't think that a live can be recorded with another phone. And then to make matters worse, just in case it was like, hey, he could be drinking water in that vodka bottle, he narrated it like, woo, driving down the 170 with whatever the heck this alcohol is. It's like, thank you. So I just turned that into the social worker. That does break rules and that's probably not advised, but at the same time, like I said, am like a pretty brassy, sassy lady, and I was willing to lose my license in order to save my child's life. So,
well,
you probably don't condone that, Dr. John, but I did.
I can add to that. And before I do, hey, this is Foster Talk with Dr. John and Dr. Jen tonight, answering your questions, parenting, foster care, adoption questions. Get those fingers flying and ask anything you want to ask. You can even ask about Jen's brand new movie. Somebody earlier today, Jen, told me they got your newest movie on a DVD. I'm afraid I don't know what that movie is. I apologize. I'm so sorry.
I mean, it may or may not be my newest movie. One is called USS Christmas. That was my newest one.
Okay, maybe that was it. All right. So in regards to what Jen just said there, I can attest, I'm not going to name any names, but I can attest that somebody that I'm married to, again, no names now, but somebody that I'm married to did the same thing that Jen did. But I don't want to throw that person under the bus. So I'm not going to tell you who it was. She's a beautiful lady, though. I can tell you that for sure. Now, I did something a little bit different. I actually did not use a separate social media account, but I watched what one of the birth parents of the children that I was, actually, there were 5 kids. These are the children that were from the House of Feces. Jenny, you and I actually talked about this on your podcast. Those children who came to our home, and then we tried to adopt them, and they went back to Virginia. We talked about that. So when I went to court because of children at some point, and I had 13 pages printed out, stapled together for the judge as evidence of the behavior and the actions of the birth parents. And I write about it all in my book, Love and Mayhem. So I'm not going to go into detail about it now, but yes, you know, sometimes as foster parents, we are protecting these children. We might be the only person who is protecting that child. And sometimes it can be hard to do that. It can be hard to do that.
Also, if a social media profile is public,
right,
and it's not a private account, the reason mine was a little sketchy was because it was a private account that I catfished. But if it's a public thing, it's their public social media, that's public. You're not infringing on anybody's rights. This is something that they have released to the public on their own stupidity. And I'm a huge advocate of turning that in to assist with the case.
Right, right. And I am as well. I am as well. We're on the same boat there. Danny says, my reunification was a nightmare at times. I emancipated out at 17. Hey, Danny, thank you so much for sharing that part with us. Sarah says, our foster son has been in care for 8 months as well, and next court will be at the 1-year mark. No progress from the parents. Is there a typical time frame in which the judge will stop scheduling checkup court dates and TPR? Jen, if you don't mind, I'll tackle that question.
Please, yeah.
So, Sarah, and I talk about this a lot here. There are 50 different states, which means there's 50 different ways of doing foster care. And in addition, there are so many different agencies in every state. Every agency has its own policies, practices, and procedures in that regard. Now, with COVID, Sarah, all those rules have been thrown out the window. All those rules have been thrown out the window, and agencies have been scrambling to try to set up things because, to be quite honest, agencies are understaffed right now because caseworkers are at home, and court systems and judges and attorneys, they are understaffed because many of them are at home as well. So if you ask for a typical time frame, it really depends upon the area that you live with, because the wheels of progress in foster care are moving very slowly due to COVID. Again, because those rules are out of the window and everybody's understaffed. So what might happen in your area last year in February 2020 is going to be very, very different than what's going to happen in February of 2021. Again, simply because of COVID. All right, Brittany's here. Our guardian ad litem friended a parent on Facebook after I reported her behavior. She accepted him without a second thought. Well, Brittany, well, thank you for sharing that. Speaking of guardian ad litems and CASAs, Jen, have you had a guardian ad litem or CASA for any of the kids that you've had in your home?
Fan of both. I think it's very important that children have CASAs or a guardian ad litem, especially when they don't have a foster parent who's advocating for them. So I have not had that honor and privilege, but I'm a big fan.
I am too. I've had, I said, again, 60 plus kids. I may have had maybe 10 CASAs through my time, not many. It's a fantastic way to help children in foster care. As I've said it over and over again, and I'm sure Jen would attest, not everybody can be a foster parent. Would you agree, Jen?
Absolutely, yeah.
But everybody can help in some way, and one wonderful way to do that is through the Guardian Ad Litem program or the Court-Appointed Special Advocate, the CASA program. Stephanie says, how do you feel about the changes coming, at least in Pennsylvania, they're closing group homes? Stephanie, the foster care is in a flux right now, and we really don't know what foster care is going to look like a year from now because of COVID, because of the new administration. I hear things about the administration coming in, but certainly nothing concrete, certainly nothing set up, certainly nothing in stone. Again, the administration is not even in place yet. So we are all going to have to wait and see how that plays out. But we have to remember, COVID really has changed foster care because caseworkers are at home right now. So many of them, so many agencies, they can't do those face-to-face visitations right now. They can't do those home inspections right now. Children can't do visitations in person. Children can't do one-on-one private therapy with their professional therapists and counselors right now. It is a challenging and troubled time, and we also know at the same time, the children are at home, and so many of them are at grave risk right now of child abuse, of isolation, of depression, of mental health, of human trafficking and predators. How do you feel about that, Jen?
You know, I think it's hard because we're all trying to solve foster care. And it's the idea of closing group homes to me is throwing more noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks. Where, you know, some group homes, you and I would both agree, anyone would agree, are very poorly run and they're horrible. You know, they're hellholes for these children. And then you have some that are run very, very well. And I think that if we could recruit recruit and retain better foster parents, you know, that would help. But I'm not somebody that's into blanket statements ever. I don't think that you should close every group home. I think we should investigate more. I think we should work on the family unit. think we should work on more therapy, more services for, you know, the birth family, work on premature reunification. You know, but I'm also somebody that's not necessarily opposed to orphanages being disbanded. So I think it all comes down to paperwork, documentation, and how you run things. And I acknowledge that there have been horror stories in group homes. There have been horror stories in orphanages, but there have been horror stories in foster homes. Are you going to close all foster homes because, you know, there are bad stories, or are you going to tackle the problem by recruiting and retaining better quality parents?
You know, some children are better off. Some children thrive better in one-on-one foster care homes. Some children thrive better in kinship environments. Some children thrive better in residential or therapeutical group homes. So it really depends upon the child. It is certainly not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to 425,000 children in our nation. Hey, we got a couple minutes left here. We have gone over time. Jen, do you have maybe time for just another question or two?
Of course, it's my fault we went over time.
No. We've had so much
not my specialty.
No, so much fun here. That's so much fun. So maybe a couple more questions here. Stephanie says, I agree, Jen. I don't think they should all be closed either. Lacey said, we had our home study face-to-face here in Houston. Good for you, Lacey. That's great. And Texas is really having some hard times in foster care. I've been to Texas so many times through the years, and I know that Texas is challenged right now. Hey, a few more minutes here. This is Foster Talk with Dr. Jen and John on this Tuesday night special edition, stretching it out a little bit more. So glad that each of you are here with us tonight. Again, if you want to get in, I've got a few more questions here. If you want to get some questions about Jen or myself and our experiences as foster parents, or you want to hear about Jen's latest movie, or you want to hear about, how about this? How does this sound? So you want to be a foster parent. Would that be a book you want to buy? Let us know. A couple more questions here we'll take from you here. Danny says, it takes a village. Each village needs to step up and police their neighborhood. Well said, Danny. That's well said. Haley says, we're brand new foster parents. First placement. I'm not one to sit by and keep my mouth shut, although the attorney told me I'm not a player in this. I would like to know where my place is as a foster parent. What can I say in court? How do I make my voice heard? Thanks for asking, Haley, and thanks for being with us tonight. Jen, give that to you there.
Yeah, that was a hard thing for me in foster care too. It is the worst thing in the world when you can't say something, especially when you are not someone to sit on the sidelines. I can relate to that if you didn't hear about my catfish accounts. I would go back to what Dr. John said, document. You know, make sure that you are documenting everything from an unbiased perspective. Especially if you know, it's COVID, so I don't know, but especially if you are monitoring the visits, you know, note the things that you see. If you are having FaceTime visits with your child and the bio parents, make notes after every single visit. And yes, it's super annoying to do that. You know, it is copious amounts of your time that it takes, but I would note good things and bad things. That's how you become unbiased in the caseworker's mind, is to point out good things that you saw as well as the bad. So you don't just look like, you know, you're the bad cop that's just be like trying to take the child. You know, you are pointing out good things. You're also highlighting the bad things. So for me, you know, and that's your caseworker's job to turn that in. And I would pray that you get a good caseworker.
Definitely want to point you to a couple webinars here. I want to encourage you to watch the webinar, Caseworkers and Foster Parents Working Together. caseworkers and foster parents working together. It is a team, and you need to remember this. The caseworker has emotions and feelings just like you. She's probably under a great deal of stress right now and anxiety because all agencies are right now under COVID. So there's a few things you can do to make that relationship a little bit better. And you also say you've been told you have no voice or rights to say anything. So here's the second webinar, Stephanie, I'm going to encourage you to watch. Rights and responsibilities as a foster parent. You do have rights as a foster parent. At the same time, you do have responsibilities. So those are two webinars I encourage you to watch. And Stephanie, you can find those at the Foster Care Institute. Okay, maybe one or two more questions here. Sarah says, what's some advice for someone just getting out, what's some advice for someone just getting started out in the licensing process? Hey, Sarah, thanks for asking. And I'm going to let Jen answer that.
I would say, you know, if you have social media, the first thing I would say is start following other foster parents by doing like-minded, awesome foster parents. The way you find them for me on Instagram is the hashtag #GetToAttached. That's a foster parent hashtag. That's going to be quality foster parents that really care about their kids. And I would say connect with them, you know, because they will support you in the journey. And I would also just to go back to the last question for a second, I would say my social workers always loved me, even though I was a bit of a thorn in their side in like almost over communicating. I did so much paperwork and so much documenting, which actually made their job a lot easier. So they more appreciate it than not.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah, absolutely right. Documentation does make the job easier. I love my caseworkers too. I've had some fantastic caseworkers, some caseworkers that I have become friends with and still friends with, even though they're no longer caseworkers. I did have one that, and I'm the person, as you know from my books, friends, you know from my books, I'm the person who's always cracking jokes and making light of a situation, and my wife's kicking my leg under the table telling me to stop, and I had one caseworker who said, Dr. John, I do not do humor. Oh, I guess we're done here for the day. Sarah, my suggestion for you is this. If you've not started yet, make sure that you and your partner, you and your spouse are both on the same page, because you both have to be fully committed to it. Because if you're not, if one person wants to be a foster parent and the other does not, you can't do it. You cannot do it. It can destroy relationships and marriage. So make sure you're both on the same page. As Jen said, find some type of support group, whether it's right here every Tuesday and Thursday night, whether it is your local foster parent support group in your county or area or state, or at the national level, the National Foster Parent Association. Find some type of support group who can help you with this, and also let your family members know that this is something that's very, very important to you, and that you're going to be bringing children into your home that are going to become members of your own family. All right, and
you're gonna love it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, Sarah. I'm going to be honest with you. There have been days, Sarah, where I've questioned it. There have been days where I pulled out my hair. In fact, see, there's nothing left because I pulled it all out. This is a weave, and there's not much left of my weave. And there have been days where I've cried. There have been days where I've been angry. At the same time, it's been the most wonderful adventure I've ever experienced, and every child's made me a better person. So get ready for a fantastic roller coaster, and make sure you continue to do your research. Always learn, always learn, always learn. All right, maybe one more question left if we can get to it here, because we're way past our time tonight, and I've got kids I gotta. Oh, Sarah says, ha, thank you guys. My pleasure, Sarah, glad you did that. All right, Jamie says, don't give up. Even getting the training done and getting licensed is stressful. Jamie, it can be a little stressful sometimes. You know, Jen, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I was a parent of 3 children. After my first child died, as a parent of 3 children, my wife and I had our college degrees. I had been teaching high school for some point. My wife had a degree in sociology and linguistics at that point before she got a doctorate. When we became foster parents, we went to the training license and they thought, okay, we got this. We got this. I recognized within the first 20 minutes of my first placement that I'm not ready for this yet. I wasn't prepared. I read about this, but I didn't really think about it. What was your experience, Jen, your first placement?
That's so crazy. That's encouraging to hear, Dr. John. You know, Caden was my first placement, and other than him being super stinky and, you know, just like did not show up very well, it was awesome. You know, it was awesome. He was 4 months old and it was incredible. But as far as the licensing procedure goes, I mean, luckily everyone I've worked with has had a sense of humor, or at least they have really good poker faces. I mean, for me, it was literally just like, what do you need a kidney? Like, what else do you need? Like, you've asked me questions. I don't know. Everybody's licensing is probably different, but for me, it was like Jason and I were in separate interview rooms, and like they're asking us like marital questions and like questions about my childhood and questions about his childhood, and like I had to answer for him and he had to answer for me, and it was like, oh my God, like they needed our blood type. It was literally, I asked them, I was like, do you also need a kid? Like, so I just felt like it was super invasive. And if you could get through that, like, you know,
well, we did the same
get yourself
thing.
a nice Keurig and drink some coffee and you're going to be fine.
We did the same thing. We had the same type of questions, but we'd already gone through that when I tried to move to Australia, and they wanted to see if I was actually, before we got married, we had all those questions. Because when I moved to Australia to get married to my wife, they had to make sure it wasn't a marriage of convenience. So we had all those questions beforehand. All right, last question from Sarah, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight. Sarah says, can you become foster parents even if you don't make a lot of money or have any college degree? Dr. Jen.
I think so, Dr. John.
Yes, absolutely. You don't have to have a lot of money. Absolutely. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to have a big house. You don't have to be married. What they're going to look at is can you provide support, stability, consistency, structure, and care for a child and keep that child safe. And I think most importantly, you've got to have a heart for kids. You don't have to be married, you don't have to be licensed, you don't have to have a college degree. You've got to have a heart for kids because it's gonna, it can tear your heart out sometimes. It can tear your heart out sometimes. Lacey said that's how our interview was too, and Lacey says it was so stressful. Hey, Dr. Jen, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I've really enjoyed this, and it was fun. I've learned some stuff tonight from my brassy and sassy friend, if you will. Great time. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And if you would like us to do this again in the future, please message myself or let Jen know, and maybe we can do this again soon. And we are, just like you, so grateful for all that you do as foster parents. I often tell Jen, I often tell this, and then I'm gonna leave the last word for you, maybe give them some words of inspiration. Oh, Sarah says, thank you, guys. Danny says, my foster mom was a saint. Thank you, Danny. Lots of love for us. Thank you, everybody. So my words of inspiration are this, and then I'll leave it to Jen. My friends, if you're new to foster parenting, years from now, those children may not remember your name. And years from now, they may not remember your face. But years from now, they will remember this. I promise you this. They will remember that for a time in their life, and maybe the only time in their life, somebody loved them. That is how you change the life and change the world of a child. Jen, I'll give you the last few words here.
Well, I mean, I would not only echo that, but add on the fact that foster care is a cycle. So many times these children, more times than not, more, so like 90% of the time, I would say that the children who have entered foster care also had a parent that was in foster care. And so when you recognize that it's a cycle of abuse, it's so much easier to have empathy and love and understanding toward the birth parent that infuriates you sometimes, because you have to understand that they are also, while they've made bad choices and, you know, maybe they should know better, they were not parented and they need your love as much as that child does. Your primary role is protecting that child. And sometimes, as awful as it is, you have to protect that child from their birth parents' own stupid decisions. But your secondary job is to love, and that includes loving the birth parent so wholeheartedly. And so just know that, you know, it's so much easier to have grace toward the birth family when you understand that they also probably went through what this child went through. So I will leave you with that, and also say that if you message me on Facebook, as Dr. John can tell you, I probably won't message back because I don't understand Facebook. It's not that I don't care, it's that I don't understand it. But you can find me on Instagram, and I'm very busy there.
Jen, those are beautiful words. I couldn't agree more. I just want to say amen. Amen. Beautifully said. Those parents, So many of them have suffered from their own trauma, their own pain, and they never got the professional help they needed. So beautifully said, Jen. Thank you for that. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for spending this time with us. This 30 minutes has turned into an hour. So I thank you for spending the night with us. For Foster Talk with Dr. Jen and John DeGarmo, I'll see you here again Thursday night when we have a whole different world. Until then, thank you for all that you do. Cheers.
Bye. Bye.